Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, based on where you're joining us from. It's almost 8 p.m. in India, and I know it must be really early in the East Coast in New York. So let's give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join before we start. And for those of you who've already joined us, welcome to the Banyan Impact Fellowship Information Session. We will wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join before we start. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to the Banyan Impact Fellowship Information Session. Hello, everyone. We are delighted that you could join us today. My name is Hari, and I'm the Program Manager for Banyan Impact Fellowship. I also have with me our 2006 Banyan Impact Fellow alumni, Christopher Turillo. Chris is the co-founder of Medha. Welcome, Chris. In a short while, we will hear more about Chris's fellowship experience and the incredible work he does through Medha. Little bit about the structure of the information session. I will start with the presentation for about 10 minutes, talking about the fellowship program and the application process. Following that, our fellowship alumni, Chris, will talk about his fellowship experience, and then we will conclude the session with question and answer. So I encourage everyone on the call to post their questions in the comment section, and we will get to the questions in the last segment. Banyan Impact Fellowship is American India Foundation's oldest program. It started in 2001 and was formerly known as William J. Clinton Fellowship for Service in India. American India Foundation is committed to improving the lives of underprivileged, especially women, children, and youth. The Banyan Impact Fellowship is a binational volunteer service program in the US-India corridor with the mission to building a lasting bridge between the US and India. The fellows, part of the first cohort, worked on a disaster relief, but over the past 24 years, we've had 573 fellows work across 255 partner organizations on various projects closely linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The fellowship is a 10-month in-person volunteer service program in India between September and June. The program brings together both Indians and US nationals to foster meaningful connections. Through a matching process, shortlisted candidates are mapped with grassroots NGO in the development sector to accelerate impact in India. Fellows, along with host organization, define project scope for the fellowship to serve the communities on ground. The Banyan Impact Fellowship program focuses on the long-term impact. The thematic areas of the projects that the fellows work on have expanded from disaster relief in 2001 to different areas that include education, public health, livelihoods, minority rights, so on. Here's a list of some of the benefits part of the fellowship program. Mentoring program through senior fellows who are seasoned social sector professionals. There is an ongoing mentorship program that each of the fellows receive as part of the fellowship. You also receive a living stipend. As part of the fellowship, your visa and travel expenses are covered. Your health insurance and mental health counseling during the time of your fellowship is covered. There is language training that is provided for the fellows as part of the fellowship. Besides that, there are multiple professional development opportunities and networking and career opportunities with the vast alumni network of Banyan Impact Fellowship. Here is a testimonial from an alum, Erin. She was serving in Rajasthan in Jaipur with an organization called EcoRap. During her fellowship, she worked with rural women in the community in recycling waste materials to build products and ensure sustainable means of livelihood through micro enterprise opportunities. I'm giving it 10 seconds for you all to quickly read Erin's testimonial. Here, we see Maitreyi, a 2018-19 BIF alumni, and her project was focused on education and in making education more engaging and fun for public school students in Gujarat. pausing for 5 seconds for us to read the testimonial of Maitreyi. Now let me talk a little bit about the eligibility criteria. Our applications for the 2025-26 cohort is open now. US citizens, you need to be sort of fulfilling the following criteria to be able to apply for the fellowship. You need to be a US citizen or a permanent resident or Indian citizen. You need to be between 21 to 35 years of age, hold a bachelor's degree or other undergraduate degree, eagerness to learn with host organization, and a commitment to drive positive and sustainable change. Now I'll talk a little bit about the application process. There are two components in the first step, the application step, which involves essays and interviews. In the essays, we look for your motivation to apply for the fellowship. Essentially, why the fellowship, why you, and why now. The shortlisted candidates, based on the application review, will be invited for an interview round. After the interview round, we move to the matching round. The matching step is between the host organization and the shortlisted fellows. During the matching process, the host organization and the shortlisted candidate get an opportunity to interact. During this stage, you can match up to 3 organizations for interactions. Once successfully matched with a host organization, you will form the cohort of Banyan Impact Fellowship. That is when your training begins. So there is a beginning, midpoint, and endpoint training, besides the ongoing training that happens during the 10 months of the fellowship. Besides the beginning, mid, and endpoint conferences and trainings, there is ongoing support in the form of program team support and senior fellow support that fellows receive throughout the year, besides the host organization supervisor who you will be directly working with. Broadly, the fellowship timeline is between September and June. The orientation starts in September, and the fellowship comes to a conclusion in June through a public seminar. It is with great pride that I introduce our alumni, Christopher Turillo now. Christopher is the co-founder of this incredible organization based out of India, Medha. For people that don't know about Medha, hey Chris, welcome back to joining us. Can I request you to take a minute to introduce yourself and the incredible work that you do through Medha?
Thank you, Hari. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's an honor to be here. I did the fellowship a very long time ago now. I think exactly 20 years, actually, from 2005 to 2006. And some of the photographs you see are from that time. I actually thought that I didn't have very many photographs from that fellowship, from this fellowship, but then when I started going back into the photo albums, it turns out that I actually had a lot of photographs, and it was nice to see some of those memories that I had, and this is actually a very small subset of them. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Happy to speak to all of you about my time, during the fellowship. I was in Hyderabad during that time, and I actually ended up staying for an additional year after the fellowship was over. So I spent 2 years in Hyderabad from 2005 to 2007. And then, as Hari alluded to, I started Medha, which works in the kind of career guidance, school to work space with youth in North India in 2011. So now it's been almost exactly 14 years since I've been doing this work. And I'm based in Lucknow, and we operate across Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Uttarakhand, and Bihar. So these kind of 4 states in the northern eastern part of the country. So yeah, happy to interact with all of you. If you have any questions about the fellowship time, the post fellowship time, I'm happy to discuss all of those. And looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris, for that. While we wait for people to share in questions, I have a lineup of frequently asked questions that generally participants would like to hear from our alumni panel. My first question to you is: Could you? I know you spoke a little bit about this in your introduction, but could you tell a little bit about your host organization and the sort of work that you did during your fellowship?
Yeah. So for me, the fellowship was very much sort of like a means to getting back to India and getting to work in India. And for some of you, you may also view the fellowship that way. But, I had come to India as an undergraduate student, and I think at that time had sort of the foreigner's romanticism for India. It was very different from suburban Massachusetts and where I grew up. And so I had this desire to sort of, come and live and work in India, which was a place, that I had only spent a couple of months at that point. And also during that undergraduate time, I had sort of been exposed to the world of kind of microcredit or, access to finance and income generating loans. So I was interested in working in that space because it was kind of booming back in the early 2000s. And so I wanted to explore that. And it actually took several years. I started reaching out to a bunch of different microfinance organizations, and they all said that, you don't have any finance experience, you don't have any language skills. Why would I pay for you to come work here in India? And it was actually very, serendipitous that I sort of found AIF, because through one of these conversations, and this was also kind of the early days of, a lot of internet activity as well. And I was fortunate to find someone in one of those kind of chat rooms somewhere in, 2002 or 2003. And they told me that, look, again, I can't really fund you to come work here, but there's this organization called AIF, and they have this fellowship program. And, maybe if you apply to that, then you can get matched with us, or, you can come and work here. So that's actually how I found AIF. And, they told me that, look, we don't really do that of just sort of like funding you to go work in an organization. But yes, we have this fellowship program. And there is a matching process, and, you have a say in the matching process. The organization has a say in the matching process. So yeah, after honestly, almost multiple years probably of trying to find my way back to India, that's how I, came across the fellowship program. And once I was accepted, I went through that, sort of matching process, and I articulated my strong desire to work in microfinance and, work in that space and work in Hyderabad. And fortunately, that kind of worked out where, they had some organizations that were working in that space, and I was able to kind of interact with them. And, I still had to kind of sell myself to the organization and what I could sort of do. But thankfully, because of the fellowship, it enabled me to be able to convince some of those, organizations that had been saying no to me for a couple of years to finally sort of say, yes, you can come and work here. So yeah, I think that is also, I wanted to share that because I think the reasons and the background and, how the fellowship sort of plays a role in how you're thinking about your future is also important, that it can enable you to, sort of find your path there. It doesn't have to be just based on, maybe the confines of what the fellowship may look like, but it can also be a very, great enabler for you to pursue something that may already be in your mind about why you may want to go to India, what kind of work you may want to do. And it may create a path for you to be able to achieve that, like it did for me. So yeah, Hari, I know that wasn't exactly an answer to the question that you asked, but I think at least for me, sort of that background of how I came across the fellowship and what door it opened up for me is sort of very important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad that you sort of, walked us through that, because, our fellowship, deadline is coming to a close or draw in 2 weeks. And I'm sure a lot of people who are on the fence about applying could sort of relate to, your process of how you went about it when you were sort of, foraying into this. So thank you so much for sharing that. But, if you have any advice for people who are on the fence about applying, would like to hear that now before I move on to the next question, because it's like, you already started speaking a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's usually very little downside to applying for something like this. Obviously, it's just a matter of sort of like time and energy, and there's always an opportunity cost to other things that you have sort of going on in your life and all of that. But I have and I have now, as part of Medha's work, applied for a lot of fellowships and been part of a lot of fellowships. AIF may have been the first one, but it was definitely not the last one. And even if I didn't get them, I have always found the application process quite valuable, because it sort of forces you to think about and reflect, why am I doing this? And do I really want this? And um, am I applying for this for the right reasons, as well? A lot of times these fellowships are sort of, prestigious in their own way. And so we may be applying because other people are applying, or it comes with some sort of status or some kind of ego associated with it. So I think it also forces you to really reflect on, is this something that I want? Do I want it for the right reasons? And then I think it also helps to really articulate, and you have to write, and you have to go through the interview process of what are you looking to do, right? Like if it's about sort of service and social impact in India, then it really forces you to think about what kind of areas am I actually passionate about? What kind of contribution can I actually make? What am I doing this for? Like, how do I see it leading to something that's in my future? What do I really want to get out of this? So yeah, I don't know. Again, obviously everyone has their own priorities and time or whatever, but I think that usually, again, even if you don't get it, it's usually like a worthwhile exercise to write that down and to reflect on those things, because if it's not this fellowship, then it's something else that you're applying for or thinking about, or figuring out, what do I want to do in the future? And being forced to kind of apply for something like this is one great way of really pushing you to figure out, what do you actually want. So that's what I would say about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's always everyone's kind of personal choice, but I
Yes.
think it's never a bad investment of time, personally, or at least I haven't found it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing, what sort of prompted you to take that plunge, and sort of, sharing your perspective on for people who are on the fence about it. Chris, coming back to your fellowship, I know it's been, almost 2 decades, and what incredible years. So could you jog back in time and talk to us a little bit about, key challenges and highlights during your fellowship, to whatever extent. I'm sure, you remember your fellowship fondly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where maybe these photographs were helpful to sort of refresh the memory. As you can see, I have, aged significantly in these 20 years. So it was a long time ago. Yeah, look, I think for me, the things that sort of really stand out was sort of the group of friends that I had actually outside of work. So that is kind of this upper middle picture. And these are all people, and there were multiple groups of friends actually that I had outside of work. This may have been one wholly. The year before, it would be a slightly different group of people. But these were all non-work friends actually. And I think, yeah, one of the things that kind of stuck with me was how much I was able to sort of form that friend circle and community around me in Hyderabad, which has never been particularly easy for me. I'm fairly introverted. I haven't been someone who kind of was able to sort of make friends in groups very easily. But when you're in a different place for a finite kind of period of time, and there were a lot of people from different parts of India and other parts of the world that sort of, happened to be in Hyderabad kind of during that time, it made for a really special, mix, there. And also when you're a lot younger, you're a lot more open to kind of making friends and doing those things. So I think that, for many of my peers in the fellowship and others, they had a similar experience where, there was a lot of people that they were sort of able to work with and make there. I think the second one is kind of the picture that you see on the right, upper right, which is the sort of work friends actually in the work colleagues and group. And I think honestly, the most significant part of that was I met my co-founder at Medha during my fellowship. He was from a rural management institute here in India. He was in his first job. I was kind of in my first job in a way. We came from very different worlds. And we immediately sort of connected and bonded, in addition to a lot of other friends and colleagues, sort of that I had at work. But Vyomkesh, obviously, I have now known for 20 years. We have started Medha together, continue to sort of work with. And so it's a very special relationship that, really was a result of the, sort of like fellowship. And then, of course, there is the other fellows, which is the lower right-hand picture is the orientation actually. And when those bonds were kind of formed, and I'm still in touch with a lot of fellows, from that time. The woman in the black T-shirt is actually on my board, and is a financial advisor for us. The young guy in the pink T-shirt, I just sent an email to this morning, coincidentally, Ben. So many of these people I'm actually still in touch with today. So yeah, I mean, those were the, kind of what stood out to me. Challenges, I know, Hari, you kind of spoke about challenges, sort of a longer question, and, we don't have like a lot of time, but I think, the biggest challenges that I faced, and I think a lot of people, whenever I've interacted with fellows over the years, is sort of the expectations between the host organization and the fellow in terms of what are they expecting you to do in terms of work? What do you want to do in terms of work? What are some of the expectations they may have around, the way that you operate within the office and otherwise, and, again, your expectations around that. So yeah, I think that those are some of the challenges. And then just feeling like, how do I add value and how do I do something where I feel really proud of what I've done here in a short period of time, when there's a very big learning curve a lot of times in terms of, what you can kind of do. So yeah, I think those were, some of the big challenges, in addition to just adjusting to, life and things away from, your family and friends and all of that.
Yeah. Wow. Especially the aspect where you said how you're still in touch with, some of these people. It's so incredible to sort of hear that. Especially, since it's been 20 years. It's beautiful how these relationships have evolved today, and you're still in touch with them. So, Chris, I think while we, wait for people to add questions to the comment sections, I do have two more questions. So I'm just going to follow that up with my previous question. So the next one is, you touched upon this a little bit, but curious to understand, how did you initially sort of, settle into the host organization, the community? It's Hyderabad, Telugu-speaking people, or Urdu, based on which part of Hyderabad you are in. So how did you sort of navigate the language differences, the community, making, those initial relationships? Could you talk us, a little bit about that? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I think at work, and I think, many of you will be in environments where, at least some percentage of the office will be able to kind of communicate in English. So, you're not like completely sort of lost. Many of you will be, coming with maybe some language skills. Some of you will be taking language classes. So, look, I think, that environment is generally there for you to manage the kind of language way, and in whatever you're interested in, right? If you really want to learn the language more or practice the language more, that opportunity will sort of be there. If you're, self-conscious about it, like I may have been and continue to even be today, you may default to English in certain settings where, people are there. And then, of course, in certain contexts, maybe outside of work, you will be forced to, figure out how are you going to communicate with, people on a day-to-day basis that may not be, able to speak any English, and, how you kind of like handle that and deal with that. So I think that that's there. I think in terms of settling in, otherwise, I think that's where the um, expectation setting with the host organization is really important. And I think really spending a lot of time up front to make sure that it's clear about what are they expecting from you, what do you want to do, where is their alignment there, where is their misalignment there. And I think as much as possible, really being pretty flexible early on, right? I think ultimately you definitely want to work towards a place where you're doing the kind of work that is, something that's you're learning a lot and you're getting a lot of stimulation from, and you're really passionate about that area. But I don't think it's unrealistic to sort of, accept that in the first few months, you may be doing the kinds of things that are not what you sort of had in your mind about what you were coming to do. But it may be valuable for the organization. Like I remember, early on, I was doing a lot of like communications like work, writing press releases and working on PowerPoint presentations for funders that are in English, and maybe going and meeting different media outlets, which was not really what I sort of had in my mind, that, I would be in this sort of communications, marketing, sort of like PR role. But those were some skills that I had, and as a native like English writer, that it made sort of sense for me to do some of this, PR writing or whatever it was. And that's kind of what they needed. So I did that, and eventually moved into a very different kind of role. Byung-Kish and I actually started a department doing like business development and partnerships and more like research kind of stuff. So, eventually my role changed into something maybe that I was a little bit more interested and passionate about. But for those first 3-4 months, I kind of did what they wanted me or expected me to sort of do. And where I probably could add some value, because there, maybe other people on the team didn't have those skills and they sort of needed it. So yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. Try to be flexible if you can, and gradually, eventually, if there are things that you want to do that you're not currently sort of doing, find those opportunities to do them, advocate for them, and prove that, you can add value in those other areas as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Chris. My next question is, post the fellowship. So, I know a lot of participants that are viewing, the live would be, wondering about what are some of the post-fellowship opportunities. And I would definitely want to sort of hear your story of, how you navigated that, like post-fellowship to now, this incredible organization called Medha. Could you walk us through your career trajectory post-fellowship?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was pretty clear that I wanted to come back to India. And I think I was pretty set on that. And I think that I saw a lot of my peers, sort of going for graduate school, postgraduate. And I think that sort of motivated me to do that. I wasn't someone who sort of went into the fellowship with this idea that it's going to help sort of build my CV and so that I can get into a good graduate school program. Which I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with if, people sort of see it that way, but I wasn't necessarily one of those people. But I did see that a lot of my peers were, going down that path. And I think that motivated me almost in a bit of a competitive way as well, to say, why can't I do that? Or why can't I go to one of these, good schools? Because I was not someone who was ever very academically inclined. I didn't go to the best undergraduate kind of program. And it wasn't something that, I was very focused on. But I think that the fellowship and the peer group in the fellowship definitely motivated me and kind of pushed me to say, why not go and learn in one of these sort of elite academic institutions. But then the thought again was always sort of in the back of my mind that I would like to come back to India and I would like to start something with Byomkesh. And I think again, part of that was the entrepreneurial sort of environment that I was in during the fellowship. Microfinance was sort of this booming entrepreneurial space. They were getting equity investment, and they were growing very quickly, and they all had sort of charismatic entrepreneurs that were running these programs or these organizations. So that I think also was something that was of interest to me. And so even during this 3.5 years I was in graduate school, because I did kind of like a joint degree, the whole plan was to get back to India. So for me, it was like figuring out, okay, what do we want to do? How would we sort of start that? What is sort of going on? And so I did like independent studies that were looking at the school to work space. I came back to India for all of my internship and volunteer opportunities in the summers that I had. Byomkesh and I would sort of get together and brainstorm. So this whole like kind of journey to starting Medha was the 3.5 sort of 4 years from the fellowship to while I was in sort of my postgraduate. So yeah, I think for me it was very much kind of a single track approach of I kind of want to do this, and what do I need to do during my post fellowship years to get me in a position where I can start something and we can be successful. So the kind of people that we may need to get on board for that, the kind of funders that we would need, advisors that we would need, and then really figuring out the idea like in a systematic way of like, okay, what do we want to do and what are others doing? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to just replicate what others are doing. So how do we kind of really figure out what can we do and what makes sense for us? So yeah, and I think for my other fellow peers, they had very different paths, right? Some of them went to medical school, some of them went back to corporate jobs, some of them went into consulting, right? So I think the fellowship doesn't restrict you in any way, right? It's something that you can apply to any sort of career path. Mine happened to be entrepreneurship in the Indian social kind of context, but I could have applied those 2 years in Hyderabad to, I think, anything that I wanted to do. And yeah, that's what I would say to people who are thinking about applying as well, that like, don't even really think about, is this going to help me in the future, my future career? Because the answer is yes. It's a very short answer. Yes, it will, in many different sort of ways.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think you are definitely a living, breathing proof point of long-term impact from the Banyan Impact Fellowship standpoint, in terms of the potential of alumni and the 576 alumni that are across the globe. The potential of what it could possibly look like. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. I think we'll give it a minute to see if we are getting any questions on the comment section. I know this is the final information session, and generally people joining these information sessions would have looked at previous lives. Would sort of be a little more informed than people who've joined us in previous information sessions. So please feel free to, post any questions that you have for Chris or I. We have about, 5 more minutes to answer any questions. We'll wait for a minute. If we don't have any questions, then we can give all of us back our 4 minutes. But we will wait for a minute to see if we have any more questions. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this live and sort of listening through Chris's journey with Banyan Impact Fellowship, and sort of, engaging with the application process. You have 10 more days before the application draws to a close. So, we are going to draw this meeting to an end at this point. Um, uh, if you have any questions regarding the fellowship, regarding the application process, you can write to me on Hari.Sivasubramaniapandian at aif.org. You will see that information on screen right now. So please make a note of my email ID and drop me a mail if you have any questions regarding the fellowship. Thanks again, Chris. I know it's really late in India right now. It's almost 8:40. Thank you so much
No
for making
problem.
time and sharing your story with us. Very inspiring stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good luck to everyone. Bye bye.